Hello. If you're watching this, you're watching my 15 minutes daily episode, of which this is episode 52, that I started on January 1st of this year, 2020. It is now February 21st, right? 21st of 2020. So this is 52 days in the year. I'm looking to do this every day for the next 300, well, never mind, I'm not going to do the math, but totaled to be 366 of these in a row. Hopefully not missing any. You never know. Or could die in the middle of it. Who knows? I'm 70 years old, so every day is a blessing, isn't it? The pain that we live with. Okay. Anyway. So, if you're just joining me, you'll know that, I just run my mouth for 15 minutes a day, every day, and just talk about whatever I think worth talking about. Listen to it or not makes no difference to me. It's there for anybody who wants to. Kind of weird, but anyway, so last night, we were talking about different things, and ended up on music, and I was going to telling a story. Then playing back my memory over all this, so it seems that Bruce Springsteen released his album Wild the Innocent, the E Street Shuffle, on about the first week in November of 1973, and we anyway, so just at that time, within a week or so of that release, I was saying that Howard had a band, and they were getting ready to rehearse that day, and I thought, in the beginning, maybe it was just me and Howard and Becky, and maybe the guy that is coming up the driveway shortly. But I think maybe John Peterson was there, or Danny Hawk. Certainly Danny Weezer, I think he was there too. These were all band members. Danny Hawk was guitar player, John Peterson, guitar player, Danny Weezer, drummer. And as we heard this, as I was telling you last night, we lived at a farm not far from here, and it had a very long driveway that came down a slope, over a gully, creek running through it, and up the other side, and it was pretty long. And in 1973, none of us had cars of any note. Yeah. And whenever anybody traveled up and down that driveway, as rough as it was, it made a lot of noise, because we didn't creep up and down there at 1 or 2 miles an hour or anything. we pretty much flew. But this day, the noise we heard was somebody really moving through and down into the gully and up over the creek and back up to the house, and it was the keyboard player in Howard's band. And that was Danny Nobilinsky. And he came screaming out of the car. He was holding 2 albums in his hand, and he rushed inside, and he said, "You got to listen to this. You got to listen to this. We're going to." And so we did. We had, at that time, it was my stereo. I had a big receiver, a Lafayette receiver, a really powerful one. At that time, 180 watts was was a lot of power. And we had a couple of studio monitors hanging from the ceiling on beams in the living room, and the turntable and the receiver mounted on ropes from the ceiling with platforms on the walls, and the walls were plaster. So I think on that wall, I can't remember for sure, but anyway, they were mounted on the wall, so it was a pretty sturdy, and the turntable was a direct drive. It was a I was pretty religious about my albums, and so I taught others to do the same using my stereo. which was using a disc washer before every play. The album comes out, it goes on the turntable, it gets played, the needle gets placed, the album plays, needle gets lifted, brought back, sometimes automatically. The turntable, I think, did that at that time. And it probably had one of those drop-down features. You move the arm and it drops down. Excuse me. But that, no cassette or anything of that nature at that time. We did have a reel-to-reel stereo for recording the live music. When Howard and the boys were playing, we had a reel-to-reel to do that with. But anyway, so he pulled these two albums out and he put them on the turntable, the first one, and it turned out to be Bruce Springsteen, and the very first album was Greetings from Asbury Park. So we cranked the volume up and probably hit a few joints and listened to the whole thing. As soon as it was over, and there was no discussion except that, wow, oh, this is great, whoa. I mean, nobody talked. Nobody. Then as soon as that album was over, I did, probably. Because if I was there, I was in charge of my own stereo. We played Wild the Innocent and the E Street Shuffle. And again, just, whoa. Oh my God, listen to this music. Who is doing this? Man, oh man, oh man. I mean, we were just completely blown away. I mean, stunned would be the best way to put it, really. God, I listened to good music, don't get me wrong. I had listened to plenty of it. I was an Eagles fan long before that. I didn't know Fleetwood Mac at that point. And later on, the gentleman I went to see that I talked about in a few episodes back, his name was John. He and I went down to the Celebration of Life Rock Festival. I ran into him maybe a year or so after my initial shot with Bruce and started selling him on Bruce Springsteen. And at the same time, he had never heard of Bruce. He was selling me on Fleetwood Mac, who I had never heard of. So that was just a weird thing that happened. But at this time, this is November of 1973, we are completely bugged in this whole thing. Now, understand something, we were not, Howard, a musician, songwriter, singer, piano, bass, trombone, a lot of different things he played, educated, but nonetheless, bar band. That's what his band was. That's what everybody starts out anyway, but it was a bar band playing some originals and some covers. A really good band, brother, especially Danny Hawk, when he was there. He was the Eric Clapton of Bucks County, truthfully, at that time. Nobody could touch him on a guitar, really. I don't know. I heard, I get to another story on that one later, but anyway, I know that for the next, I don't remember, mostly for the next few months, those two albums rotated through onto that turntable almost constantly. If we were playing music, other than Howard playing his own music and rehearsing or going to bars or whatever, Bruce Springsteen was on the box. And wherever we went, whoever we talked to, if they were all into rock and roll or they were hippies at all, we sold them Bruce Springsteen. I sold my brother Donald. He didn't need to be sold, he just has to listen to it. And he's been a lifelong fan ever since. In fact, he's probably a bigger fan than I am. He is probably now a bigger fan than I am, but I'm still a huge fan. Very impacted, he impacted my life pretty good. But anyway, so what's even better and more interesting than that was a great, it was a great introduction. So the holidays come and go, and now we're sometime January, February, I don't even remember when, but we listened to an AM, kind of an AM underground radio station out of Allentown called WSAN. I don't even know if they're still in business anymore, but they were a great rock and roll. They did what MMR and YSP were doing in Philadelphia, what those two stations were doing in Philadelphia, these guys were doing up in Allentown on AM instead of FM. And one day, somebody said something about WSAN was advertising tickets to a Bruce Springsteen concert to be held at the Roxy Theater up in Whitehall. And and then also at that time, these tickets weren't going to be available on Ticketmaster or anything like that. You had to go to the WSAN studios in Allentown, get in line, and prepare for that. You needed to... Oh, Angelina's coming in to visit. Hey, how you doing, baby dog? Anyway, so you had to go up and get in line. And we did, a bunch of us. I mean, geez, I don't remember how many people we all put together to go, but at least 8 or 10, and there may have been more. But anyway, we drove up to WSAN Studios on the designated morning, got in line, and all got tickets for Bruce Springsteen. And I'm going to tell you, here's the most interesting part. The venue was the Roxy Theater, still there as far as I know. It's still up there in Allentown, above Allentown in Whitehall. The Roxy Theater. It was $2 a seat. 1974. April of 1974, I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, April of 74. Concert was held at the Roxy. Bruce Springsteen, $2 a seat. Now, we had pretty good seats. We had gotten in line pretty early on the very first day of ticket sales. So we were maybe 5 rows, maybe 6 rows off the front, and pretty dead center in the theater. I think some of us were on the slight right, and some of us were just some were in the right center, and some were in the right side, but close to that right-hand aisle there. But anyway, beautiful setup, just a black stage. But the first time I had ever seen this, now I knew what Bose 901 speakers were in my life at that point. But what I didn't know was that Bose made a commercial version. And at this theater at that time, there was a bank of, I gotta say, either 9 of them or 12 of them on each side, stacked. 901s, and they're distinctive, but these were wrapped in black, amplifier material. You see on PVs and that sort of thing. It was just wrapped in this black material, but there was 2 banks, huge banks of Bose 901s. And I don't know what powered them, but as far as I remember, they opened with New York City Serenade. And the very first opening notes of that concert were David Sancious, and he was still with the band as keyboard player, the piano player at that time. David Sancious leaning over the keyboard with the top up, and he's leaning into the keyboard and stroking while he's holding the keys down to make the chords. He's stroking those strings and making those opening notes of that song on E Street Shuffle. And it was, from that point on, one of the greatest concerts I ever witnessed in my life. It was just unbelievable. First off, we knew every song by heart, and he played every song on both albums that I can remember. I'm pretty sure that we didn't miss a thing, and he did a bunch of other covers that I can't remember to this day. But it was a great thing. Talk about that another time too, maybe. But it's available. I mean, if the concert's not available, but you can find information about it still on the web. Anyway, time for me to go. 15 minutes are up. Take care, everybody. Good night. Take care of your loved ones. And
Take care of your pets.
right, take care of the pets. I got mine right here. And be kind. Good night.